I'm with Vinny Appice, and his brother is Carmine Appice. My first question for you, Vinny, because I do know you, I'm good friends with your brother, is it Appice or Appice? Why do you two say it differently?
Because hang on a second. Because Carmine says it wrong.
Go ahead.
The funny thing is, if you listen to, there's a Vanilla Fudge album from the 70s called Near to the Beginning. It's a live album, and Carmine did a drum solo. After the drum solo, Tim Bogert introduced him as Carmine Appice on the drums. So he was Appice at one time. And I believe when he started playing with Rod Stewart called him Appice, pronounced it. And that's when he decided to change it, and I didn't like the way that sounded, Appice. So I stuck with the way my father said it, which was Appice. And we have another brother, Frank, he says a peach.
That's great.
It's crazy.
Well,
so three different pronunciations.
I think the way that you say it, I will hand it to you. I think that your integrity is much better than Carmine's.
Yeah.
You know, let's make fun of Carmine a little bit, you know.
Yeah. And then, Carmine played with Ozzy, in the 80s. And so Ozzy, after the drum solo, would go, Carmine Appice. And then I played with Ozzy after that for a tour in Europe with Sabbath. And he introduced me as Vinny Appice. And then I had to tell him the next day in the hotel lobby that Carmine's Appice and I'm Appice.
That's great.
And the next night he was really concerned to get it right. He looked at me while he introduced me, Vinny Appice. And he's looking at me like for acknowledgement, like that he got it right. And he did get it right.
Oh, that's a good thing. So,
so he was concerned about it.
Say somebody's listening for the very first time and they might be familiar with your name, but they're not really sure who this Vinny Appice is. I like doing what's called rock and roll resume, where you get to tell everybody about yourself instead of the disc jockey asking you all of these questions. So, Vinny Appice, it is time for your rock and roll biography.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a new one. I've never done that before in an interview. Anyway, let's see. I started playing drums because of my brother Carmine. He's 11 years my senior, and I was inspired by watching him play and watching his gigs and all that kind of thing. And then I grew up in Brooklyn, played with bands in Brooklyn, and then one band, guitar player knew Jimmy Iovine, big producer and owner of Interscope Records and Beats Audio. And back then, it was just Jimmy, he was just producing, and he brought us into the Record Plant Studios and produced some songs, and then they gave us a management deal at Record Plant, and then we hooked up with John Lennon. We did hand claps. My band did hand claps on the song "Whatever Gets You Through the Night" with John Lennon. And then after that, we started doing a couple other things with John. We did 3 videos with John Lennon, and then we did a show at the New York Hilton that was taped for TV. It was a live show, and that was the last show we ever played. So I got to do that, and I was like 16 years old.
Wow.
And then from there, I went on to play from that same studio, Record Plant connection. Rick Derringer heard me play in there. He heard some of the tapes, and then when I saw him there, he got my number. He was ready to put his band together. He called me. So that was the band Derringer. We did 3 albums. And then from there, I had my own band called Axis. 1978, we put out an album called It's a Circus World, produced by Andy Johns, who did a lot of Zeppelin recordings and a lot of people. And from there, I got a call from Black Sabbath. And I actually got a call from Sharon Osbourne about Ozzy putting a new band together. But since it was in England and I heard funny things about Ozzy, I actually turned it down. And then about a month later, I get a call from Black Sabbath. They're in Los Angeles. That's where I live. I went down and played with them. I'm in Black Sabbath now. So from there, it was Black Sabbath for a while. Then that fell apart a little bit with Ronnie and Tony and Geezer.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie put together a new band called Dio. He asked me to join. I accepted that invitation, and we did some good albums with that. And then it was back and forth with Sabbath again in 92, and then Dio again after that, and then a little later on, Heaven and Hell.
Right.
Which was the original Sabbath, really, anyway.
Well, what years were you with Sabbath on the first run? I'm trying to figure that one out.
The first run was 1980 to about 1982.
Oh, my gosh. I saw you in concert then when you were with Black Sabbath. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
In fact, that was one of my first concerts. It was Blue Oyster Cult Black Sabbath.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the same,
Black
right?
and Blue Tour.
Right,
Yep.
exactly. So I convinced my parents that they would let me go to MSG to go see you guys, and they're hesitant. So we go up on the train, New Jersey Transit, into Penn Station, and my parents agreed to pick me and my friend Chris Friel. We went to a boarding school. They were going to pick us up over by the post office on 8th Avenue and 32nd Street, whatever that is, on the corner.
Yeah.
So we had a good time at the concert, man. But when I came out, there was so much pot in the air. I was stoned. I mean, I was just, tripping balls, as they say.
Wow.
Yeah, my parents forbade me for a good couple years from going to see a concert again. They didn't trust me. They didn't trust my judgment after that. Now,
right. That's funny.
I know at one point, when I met you the first time was at a radio station in New York City, and I was working with your brother on various things. Your brother and I get along very well. In fact, I introduced your brother to Leslie, who he's,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was the guy. Yeah, you know what he did? He kept coming over to pretend like he wanted to hang out with me. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, man, who's that girl over there? I go, oh, that's Leslie. Oh, maybe one day you can introduce me. I'd like to be on her show. I'm like, all right, Carmine, all right, fine. So I made the introduction. Next thing you know, they're together ever since. And he wrote that in his book. Remember he wrote that book?
Yes.
Yeah, whatever the name of that freaking book is. So he mentioned me in one of the chapters, so I got that going for me. But when I first met you, I don't know if you remember this, but I go, what are you doing now? And you said, you were working at Verizon. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened was I came off the tour, and I was really into computers. And so at that point, I had time, so I went and got all the certifications for Microsoft, Cisco routers, and there I met some people, and they kept saying, man, you're so good. Verizon's looking for techs, and I'm like, nah. I said, I play drums. I can't do that. And they kept bugging me. And finally, I went down to meet them. They knew I played drums for Sabbath and stuff. And then, so when I met them, they interviewed me, and then they tested me on some questions. And I knew all my shit, So they go, well, you got a job if you want to. And I went, what? Really? I'm like, me? I never worked a job. So at that time, music was a little, grunge was coming in, and it was a different time, and there wasn't a lot of things I was planning in the career. So I thought, you know what, I like challenges, so let me check this out. So I did accept the job there for a short period of time, which I learned a lot of stuff, which was cool.
Well, I think that's great. What that does is it helps you relate to the average fan that might go to one of your concerts. You understand what it's like to just have what everybody considers an average everyday job. And I don't know if you remember this, but I was like going, hey, you got any openings for me over Verizon? Because I was like, I got to get out of this loony bin.
It was like, wow, I thought, when they first offered me drum clinics years ago, I never did a drum clinic, and I was really nervous. I was like, what am I going to do? What do I do for an hour and a half? All these people are here. But I accepted it anyway, even though I felt uncomfortable doing the first one or two. I thought, if I don't accept challenges, or anybody doesn't accept challenges, you don't get a little further in life, you get a lot more experience when you do things like that. So this was one of those. I thought, you know what, let me try this, because the money was actually good. It was a good job. And then I was around all these techie dudes, and we were building T1 lines and all this high speed. It was when DSL was coming out, all this DSL stuff. So it was very interesting for me. And plus I got all the cool hours. Like, nobody wanted to work from 12 noon to whatever, 8 or 7 or 8 at night, because they have families and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
have kids and all that stuff. And so I take all the odd stuff. I don't care. The weekends, and it doesn't matter to me. It's like music. The weekends, you're always working. So it was a cool gig, and it was close to the house. And I learned a whole bunch of shit, so it was really cool.
And to me, it seemed like you were really happy with that, because I remember having a conversation with them like, wow, do you really miss, and I know you miss being on the road because you're a drummer. It's part of who you are. But I admired you for your willingness to go out and have those jobs like at Verizon. To me, you probably didn't realize, but that was a big deal. That inspired me to say,
Oh, really?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I actually studied my ass off, and I took the test for IBEW, which you had to take. It didn't matter that you had a college degree. This is great. What they wanted to make sure is that I took high school algebra 1 and 2.
Wow.
It didn't matter that I had a degree in which I had to take calculus in order to get to the degree. I had to go back to get my high school records to show that I had algebra 1 and algebra 2. That was so silly, right? I get to the location to take the test to join IBW to be a lineman. Guys that pull lines through the telephone poles, the big gigantic electric lines. So I get there and I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, come on. There's no way that these guys know their algebra. And I didn't want to be judgmental, but I couldn't help but think that. I studied my butt off to try to pass this test. Well, I passed it. I was the number 1 scorer. So they got me in for an interview, and I was ready to, I want to do IBEW, get out of radio, do electrical. And the starting salary was $7.95 an hour. And this is right around 2001 when I was a new dad. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't work in the New York area for $7.95. That's ridiculous. And I'm surprised that you'd pay that low, considering the fact you made me take this really hard test, which I know I'm the only person that passed without a curve here. But anyway, it was at that time that, I was thinking, well, if Vinny can go do something else, so can I. So indirectly, see, when you go and you meet people and they talk to you, and I was, a friend of your brother, and I'm like, listening to what you have to say, you have no idea of how you're inspiring those around you. And I think that's a great story, and it's something that you should know, because that, to me, I didn't really know you, but to me, it was like, wow, that guy's a good example of how you live your life. You don't let things to defeat you. Things aren't going your way. You might not like what's going on, but you found a path no matter what.
Yeah.
So those are good things, Vinny. Really good things.
I thank you. That's the first time anybody's ever told me that. Usually it's the drums inspired them and the music inspired them. This is the first time that's inspired somebody. But that's what you got to do. Otherwise, you could sit back and not do anything, and nothing's going to happen. If you don't act, you don't get a reaction. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do this next. I'm going to do this. Let's keep going, moving forward.
Right.
And it was good. I enjoyed it there for that time. Actually, I had a 2-week vacation, which I thought was funny, like 2 weeks. And that's it. So for 2 weeks vacation, one of the weeks I went to Japan and played with a band.
Oh, that's awesome.
For the weekend. And
plus you got benefits, something most musicians don't even know about, right?
Yeah, and you know what? The pay was really good.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
It was a lot more than $7 an hour.
Yeah.
$8 an hour. It was really good, and then they had all these 401ks, and it was like if people that worked at these telephone companies from years ago wound up having a lot of money when they retire.
Sure.
Go, holy crap, really?
And on the other side of it, a lot of musicians, they're still on the road to this day because they really didn't make as much money as people think.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And it's kind of sad. I think that we need to do something to help musicians that put their blood, sweat, and tears in their work. A lot of people make fun of them. You know the joke: the guy delivering my pizza, he must be a musician. Those kind of things. I don't think it's kind. It might be funny every once in a while, but it's not really kind. Where would we be without music? Where would we be without art? Right?
Oh yeah,
so,
exactly.
Music
gets people through a lot of things in life.
Yeah,
hardships, and sadness and all that stuff. That's why it's always like, oh, you inspired me with the album Holy Diver. It inspired me. I had a hard time at that point.
Right.
So, so the problem, you know, a lot of musicians don't. You got to read these contracts. You got to, you know, I tell you, you got to control the income, and you leave it to sometimes third-party people collecting money for you, or you're not doing it yourself and keeping an eye on it. You can probably get screwed.
Oh,
you know?
I can tell you with almost certainty you are going to get screwed, and you do have to pay attention. It's one of those things that I actually learned from Tony Robbins, and he said, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance will get you killed, and you have to take charge of certain things in your life. Finance is one of them. And let's move a little bit, because what the next question I have for you, do you think by going out and working for Verizon like you did, it made you an actual better drummer, and did your attitudes change, and did your work ethic somehow adjust after that experience?
It didn't make me a better drummer because, you know, I was busy doing that, but it made me feel good about being able to accomplish something else, you know, that, okay, the music slowed down right now in this period. You know, let me jump into something else that I like. You see, I didn't have to go somewhere and do something I didn't like. You know, I really liked doing that too. And actually what happened was I had started building computers and networks and this and that, and then people started calling me. They wanted computers. So really I had a little business on the side going. You know, and then my friend had 9 stores. I would be in charge of the 9 stores with the computers and the T1 connections between the stores and the network security, all that stuff. So I really like doing that stuff. So it didn't make me a better drummer, but it definitely boosted my self-esteem, and it's like, okay, an accomplishment. Like,
that's great.
It's another thing on my belt, you know, another notch in the belt, you know, that, and like I said before, the drum clinics, something I never did. And now, like, another one was rock fantasy camps. Like about 10 years ago, I started doing, they asked me to do a rock fantasy camp, and I'm like, oh man, okay, what do I do? I'm in charge of a band, and then now I've done about, 100 and something of them. But it's great to gain this experience in music and then other things in life, you know.
Well, yeah, and you're also making life better for people around you. People like going to the rock and roll fantasy camp. They like the drum clinics. It keeps you busy, and you're sharing a little bit of yourself. And then you have your own drumming tree when you think about it. You know, you're part of your brothers, but then there's the I guess you'll say the disciples of Vinny Appice as opposed to Carmine Appice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, we've been going luckily for such a long time. And that's the other thing too. You got to, we've had a long career because we never stopped really. You know, when I started in 1976 with Rick Derringer or John Lennon, Derringer, we hit the road, and it's like been on the road forever since then. And Carmine, the same thing. So we never stopped and took 3 years off and got fat and lazy. You know,
right.
We just kept going, kept doing new things. Carmine was a great inspiration for that because he did other things. He Vanilla Fudge, and he wrote drum books. He opened up a drum school. He's very ambitious with things, so that inspired me to. You can't just sit there and complain that nothing's happening. You got to go out and make it happen.
And between you and I, if he never told you this, he really loves you. I mean, he was like, my brother, you know, and he was always looking out for you and always would talk about you just in regular conversations, because it would come up like, how's your brother doing? And we would just, you know, have a couple of wines and we start talking about Vinny. Now,
I love him too. You know,
I mean,
I'm really proud of what he done, and I tell him, you know, he knows he's a big inspiration for me. You know, to do this and to play and to be good. The good thing was he was such a great drummer that when I started playing, I had to be good, or otherwise I'm going to be Carmine's brother. He's okay, you know, but I want to kick his ass.
Yeah, I get it. Now,
and he was. had to do that.
Well, Carmine and I are really good friends to the point where my daughter calls him Uncle Carmine. And every time Do You Think I'm Sexy comes on and she's rocking out, I go, I'm going to call Uncle Carmine, tell him you're listening to this song and he should get another dime for that. And I always would listen to, let me have a dime so I could call your mother. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, what are you doing? That was kind of a weird lyric. Now you're with Last in Line. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
All right. Well, Last in Line started in 2012, maybe. Vivian, we've kept in touch. Vivian Campbell and I have kept in touch, and Jimmy and I have really kept in touch because we've done a number of different projects along the years. So we're all in touch. And then one day, Viv called up and said, I just spoke to Jimmy. You up for a jam? You want to have a jam next week? Play some songs, have some fun. I said, yeah. So we got in the studio. We played some of the Holy Diver stuff and Last in Line stuff, those albums. And we had a really good time. And we decided to do it again the following week. So when we did, I called, I knew Andy Freeman was in town. He's a friend of mine. He came down and he knows all the songs. And he sang some of the Dio songs, and he blew everybody away. Like, wow. So it was so good that we wanted to do some gigs. So our manager, Steve Strange, booked us, I think it was just one gig in L.A. at the small place. And we get there and shit, and there's so many people there. The place it's small, but it was jammed, So we played that night, and people went crazy. So we thought, let's keep doing this and see what happens. And we went over to Europe. We played there, played Japan, and then we got an offer to do a record from Frontiers Records, and we did an album called Heavy Crown, which came out right after Jimmy died. Jimmy passed away, bass player. And so that was hard. And then eventually we regrouped and we got Phil Soussan on bass, and now we just completed the second album, which is out February 22nd. And we've been doing a lot of gigs. We've been doing a lot of touring in between Def Leppard's schedule with Viv.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's really awesome.
And it's really cool watching this grow into, each time we go out and play, we're getting more and more people, more and more fans. We've got a great fan base and some great fans. And it's really cool watching something that we started together that's our own get a little bigger and bigger each year.
Yeah, that is really cool. I guess you guys, you didn't have any gigantic expectations. You just went in it for the fun of it, and it grew from there.
Yeah, and now it's like, a legitimate thing. It's a legitimate band, a legitimate little business, We go out. I handle the money. I handle the money.
That's good.
That's why we're afloat. And we don't, do it with, some accounting firm somewhere.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. Besides, it's almost like you got to pay so much money to have an accounting firm who really isn't buying into your project, tell you how to spend it. And then after they get done doing all the books, you've got what? A few $1,000s left? You're right. Just don't even bother with those guys.
It happened in the very beginning because there was no direction really. Then that opened my eyes and said, you know what? I got to handle this because this is going to be stupid. I mean, I even take care of all the VIPs, all the VIPs we get. It comes to my computer. It's in our account. I know exactly what's going on, and the money's paid direct to us. And I'm right on top of this, like ridiculous. Wow. And that's why we make money, and that's why we can afford to go out and play and get a little bit more comfortable with the travel, So that's why it's important. Like I said before, for new bands and new musicians, you got to have your stuff come directly to you. Like when we did the Holy Diver album, I got some writing on that album, publishing, and I sat down with Ronnie and Wendy. Wendy offered to collect the royalties for me and pay me. send me a check. And I went, oh, that was convenient. How cool is that? And I was a lot younger then. But luckily I chose to do it myself and have, like Harry Fox is a collection agency, very big collection agency. And I did that route, and then all the money they collect goes directly to my bank account or to, yeah.
Well, so, did that happen?
Because when you do it the other way, what if you don't talk to that person after 10 years? Something you have a falling out.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to write you a check every quarter? Right.
And,
so that's an important lesson right there.
And they're also going to go, well, you didn't make that much money on it. Here's $200. Yeah, people. That's how people are. They get kind of, unfortunately, stingy. The thing about it is, once you're in the shoes you're in now, and you're taking care of the band's money, you're the treasurer. You have to remember who you are and live in your integrity, and don't. Whatever you do, treat people how you want to be treated is the bottom line in all of that. And I think based on your brother, if you found out you were doing anything different, I don't know, you might be running very fast down the street. I'm going to get you. I might be in my 70s, but I'm going to catch up to you one of these days. You got to handle it as much stuff as you can. You got to keep an eye on it if you're not doing it, or do it directly through yourself, make sure the money. I do the same thing at home, Vinny. As soon as my wife spends something on the card, I get a text alert, and within seconds I'm on the phone. What is this $35 about? She gets mad at me, but hey, listen, 35. That's $135 right there, whatever. Yeah. So just cut it out already. Yeah.
It's 105.
Oh, 105. Thank you. See, this is why I suck at math. But somehow I passed the test to make it into IBEW. See, I'm good at complex math. It's the simple arithmetics that always gives me a hard time.
When I was playing with John Lennon, I used to work with him at night and then go to high school in the daytime.
Oh, wow.
So it was such a difference of worlds. I was like, what the hell am I doing in this classroom, man? Like there's all that music I could be doing, and I just worked with John Lennon last night. And so I quit high school. My parents let me quit and pursue drumming full time, which I did. But so since I left, about, 10 years later or 5, I don't know what it was, but later on, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get my GED.
Well, that's good.
My father was still alive, and I thought that would be nice to tell him I got it. So I got a book and I studied. The only thing I had trouble with was algebra, because I never did it. And luckily, my friend was good in algebra, and he showed me some ways, some techniques, and then I was able to run it through, and boom, went and took the test. I finished like in 25 minutes, and I got it.
That's fantastic. Think most of us sit there for 4 years. You got it done in 25 minutes. It's one test. That's so.
I told my father, had I known it was this easy, I would have quit sooner.
Oh wow.
No, I'm kidding.
What would you do do you have kids now? Are you married or anything?
No.
Okay.
I was married and divorced. Now, no kids.
Okay, but what would you do if your son came to you and said, hey, Dad, I'm going to drop out of school. I'm going to work with this band down the street. You might have heard of them. They're Motley Crue.
Well, I'll tell you what. Those are the years that you can take a chance and go out and do this stuff.
Uh-huh.
When you start going to college and all that, you're blowing the young years where you have many years after that to, if it doesn't work out, to move on to something else. So I don't know. I would probably let him do it,
Oh, that's good.
If he had a promising career, but the business is different these days,
Well, the one thing I like about the business these days is you as an individual, whether it's what I'm doing or whether it is what you're doing, because of the technology, we can all just start doing it, right? When I got fired from my syndicated show, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a real pain in your ass. I'm going to create my own show. I'm going to put it out there on my own. I don't care if I make a dime. And then I'm going to put together my own website. And now I'm beating them on all fronts. I haven't made a nickel out of it, but I'm having a good time. I'm doing what I want to do. And that's the key. If you want to be a musician, you want to form a band, great. All you have to do is keep writing songs or cover some songs very well. We'll get to that in a second. And then go play, go gig. Always keep busy. Because if you keep them busy, you're not going to get in much trouble, right, Vinny?
Right, exactly. You got to keep moving on. You can't sit on your ass doing nothing.
That's right. Yeah. Let's talk about rock and roll and what you were listening to growing up. I know that you must have been a big fan of Led Zeppelin, right?
Oh yeah, Led Zeppelin was the shit. You know?
All right. How long did it take you to realize that they were pretty much a cover band?
I didn't realize any of that. I know a lot of the songs from the first record were old songs, but what arrangements they did were just incredible.
Right.
Know? So, and then after that, the second album, I don't even know on what happened after. I know some of the songs from the first album are old R&B songs.
Right. They're usually Willie Dixon. Robert Johnson. By the way, Trampled Underfoot is a Robert Johnson song, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen to the lyrics, I think to myself, did they have air conditioning cars back when Robert Johnson wrote this? It's talking about his AC.
Right.
And then When the Levee Breaks is a Memphis Mini song written in the 1920s. And when you
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And Nobody's Fault But Mine. I think it's either Howlin' Wolf or it could even be Robert Johnson, but it's some old bluesman. I forget the name of the person that did it. But I was blown away as I started to do more research and get into this stuff. Now, I made the tactical error of bringing up when Robert Plant had his solo album out around, I'm going to say 2004. I go, hey, so these are really interesting covers. And he goes, well, they're not covers, they're interpretations. Whoa, excuse me, interpretations. But I think he's right about that whatever Led Zeppelin did, they figured out a formula that really worked for them. They were able to take those